one of the worst levels of pollution ever seen in China. Dozens of cities are affected by thick smog and haze, 40 times the limit deemed safe by the World Health Organization. Now even government supporters are asking if China's rapid development has damaged the quality of life for its people. Hello there, thanks for joining us. I'm Shuli Ghosh, you're with Inside Story. As the world's second largest economy steams ahead, it's leaving a dense smog in its wake. Pollution in China has reached dangerously high levels in recent days. More than 100 million citizens have been affected. From Beijing to Guiyang, factories have been asked to close and people are being urged to stay indoors. Public anger is boiling over. Even state-controlled media are urging the government to take action. Steve Chow reports.
This is time-lapse footage of the smog creeping in over the capital. By midday on Saturday, it's a near whiteout, the dense pollution smothering the city. By Monday morning, hospitals were reporting a flood of people arriving complaining of having trouble breathing, the victims of China's rapid industrialization, so often the young.
She's been sick for a while, but the air pollution really made her worse. The coughing is really serious. We can't take her outside, but is it really safe inside? We don't know what we can do.
Online, worry has led to anger and a rare boldness, while better-known critics of the government protested, demanding officials do more. This time they were joined by editors of state-controlled newspapers. "I'm really looking forward to hearing what the government will say about this," said Ling Zhijun, senior editor of the People's Daily. "I especially want to know if the party secretary or the mayor are in Beijing. If so, how do they guarantee they can breathe safely?" Every day for a year, photographer Wang Yikun documented the pollution. His 364 photos were displayed in a gallery, acting as a counter, he says, to government lies that the air quality is improving. Still, weekends like this leave him feeling defeated.
It's been the same the whole time I've been taking these photos. The air quality hasn't improved at all. Now I just stay in, keep myself safe. Not much I can do anymore.
While public pressure has forced the government to become more transparent in reporting air quality levels, environmentalists say poor coordination between agencies and collusion with big industry have made any policies to tackle the pollution ineffective. There is a glimmer of hope that could help clear the notoriously hazy skylines of Chinese cities like Hong Kong. The local government this week says it may pass a law ordering ships coming into port to use cleaner fuel. Ships are a major source of the smog. Shipping companies say they are willing to cooperate, but hinted they may need some financial aid from the government. It's estimated that switching to cleaner burning fuels will cost the industry millions of extra dollars every year. Too much a cost, say the companies, for them to bear alone. In Beijing, a newspaper editor wrote he believes the outside world is laughing, as industry's interests and the drive to modernize have taken priority over the health of the people. He adds the view outside any window offers indisputable proof of this. Steve Chow, Al Jazeera, Hong Kong.
Let's take a look at just how bad the pollution is in China. According to the World Health Organization, there have been 500,000 pollution-related deaths since 2008. Respiratory-related cancer is the leading cause. Coal is the main polluter, contributing to 80% of China's carbon dioxide emissions. Only 1% of people in cities breathe air considered safe by European Union standards. And the large number of industrial areas are causing acid rain, which affects 30% of the country. According to a study released last year, pollution cost China's economy $112 billion in 2005 because of lost labour and medical care. So let's have a look at this subject further. Joining us now are our three guests. From Beijing, Yan Peng, China Director of Clean Air Asia, a non-profit organisation promoting better air quality and livable cities across Asia. From Manila, Marshall Mays, a financial analyst and director of Emerging Alpha Advisors, a risk advisor to financial investors in Asia. Also from Beijing, Victor Gao, director of the China National Association of International Studies and a former Foreign Service officer for the Chinese government. Good to have you all with us. A warm welcome to all three of my guests. Yan, let me start with you. I just want to talk a little bit about the measurements that have been talked about here. Now, these are PM 2.5 readings, which Chinese cities have only just started using. And these are the readings which are coming out as dangerously high. Just explain that for us.
Yes, actually it was pretty bad, very sadly, and we are also looking into the numbers of unhealthy people caused by this air pollution, but I do not have the figure right now. But this year, I think the focus, and both the media focus and the government press release, are focused on the severity of the air pollution in Beijing. So it's more about and what are the causes, what shall we do to prevent this in the future. So the focus from it's a little bit different from, let's say, a year ago when people were talking about the PM 2.5 figures versus the PM 10 figures. So I think that's something I think is a little bit more progress this year.
But the figures are really worrying though, Yan, because these PM 2.5 readings say that anything above 300 micrograms of particles in the air per cubic meter of air is dangerous, and the readings in Beijing are more than 900.
Yes, it's and even sometimes some scientists say sometimes the monitoring indicators that the PM 2.5 even exceeding 1,000 it's a critical dangerous. If we compare with the standard put forward by Chinese new standard, it is about 75 cubic meter cubic meters, but with the WHO guidelines is also 75. So, but now we are talking about 1,000 unit. It's unacceptable. So we should not adapt to air pollution. We should really fight for clean air.
Victor, pollution's not a new problem in Beijing, obviously. Why has it got so bad now? What's happened to produce this level of smog?
Well, this wave of smog, which has plagued Beijing for about 5 days in a row, is really unprecedented. I've been working and living in Beijing for more than 30 years, and this is the most serious wave of smog I've ever experienced. And people are not happy about it. I think according to experts, there are multiple reasons for that. Weather conditions are one of the contributing factors, but people are more unhappy about pollution. And in China, in Beijing today, we have about 5 million vehicles. And a traffic jam is a very regular occurrence. And you have huge amount of vehicle emission, and in addition to many other sources of pollution. Further than that, the season right now is winter in Beijing, and in many surrounding provinces and other major cities, they still use coal as their heating source in winter. So all these things contributed to this very serious deterioration of the air condition this round.
Well,
However, it's more alarming that this problem is not hitting Beijing. Yes.
Sorry, Victor, I was going to say, you mentioned the big problem of traffic and automobiles in China, but my understanding is that what the government has done in response to the smog is to ask factories to suspend their operations, to tell people to stay inside and order ships to use cleaner fuel. I mean, is it doing the right things? Is it looking in the right directions?
Well, I think the government is trying its best to do something. For example, it's halting some construction sites for fear that the pollutants will be further spread in the air. However, this is not sufficient, mainly because the problem of pollution in Beijing has been accumulated over 3 decades because of the rapid industrialization and urbanization in Beijing as well as in other parts of China. And the solution cannot be done overnight. People can be encouraged not to go outdoors, but most people have to go out to work anyway. And factories still need to be in operation. You cannot shut down all the factories. So whatever the government can do is very, very limited in dealing with this very serious onslaught of pollution. Therefore, I think the government has to do two things. One is, on the immediate term, what they can do to alleviate the problem right away so that people will no longer complain and people will no longer suffer that much. But more importantly, on the macro and longer term, what will be the changes that we need to introduce to our way of work, our way of industrialization and urbanization, and our level of attention that we need to pay to environmental protection. This is for the longer term, and this will help profoundly in improving the air quality in Beijing as well as in other parts of China.
Okay, let's bring Marshall in here. Marshall, what do you think? Is this just an inevitable side effect of the unprecedented growth in China?
Yes, and it's only the most visible aspect of it. The groundwater contamination that's been running for the last 2 or 3 decades based on all the little gadgets we all consume made in China is because of the runoff that's been going on for quite a long time. The Guangdong's water tables are really fatally damaged, but you don't notice it as much as the air because you don't breathe it every day. The air pollution is part of another industrial problem, which is the automobile industry, which is very large, obviously now the largest in the world. And it's only going to get worse once more and more and more cars get on the road. The problem is that China is stuck in what I would call the hangover of an overly fast growth period. Growth is slowing down, but the rest of the world wants China to grow so it can grow. Everyone wants growth, growth, growth. The problem is, at the scale at which China is and the amount of inefficient consumption of energy in the buildings of China, more growth means much, much more pollution. The energy intensity in China, fortunately, is not as high as in countries like the United States, which doesn't know how to control itself. But if it were like in Japan, then we would have a hope that there could be some more growth without more carbon problems. Well, I'm afraid energy consumption, higher prices, and more carbon is going to be a problem for the next decade or so.
Yeah, Victor's suggesting that there's not much the government could do at the moment, but some commentators have said that the country's pollution problem is caused by the country's biggest polluter, which is the government itself. I mean, it owns most of the factories which are causing the problem.
It's true. Most of the SOEs have older technology and heavier coal burners. I mean, China has the largest coal endowment in the world, and it's the largest coal consumer. And the quality of its coal is not as high as we would like it to see. It's a lot of sulfur. And so the nature of China's growth means it will convert that coal into carbon in the air. There's no way around that. They've tried things like clean coal and other technologies. Not much success so far. I mean, China is really stuck in a position. Either they grow and hold off revolution as the people avoid being disappointed from a slow growth period, or they have pollution. You can't have both.
Well, there's been unusually strong reaction from Chinese media, which are controlled by the government. The People's Daily, the official newspaper of the Communist Party, asked, how can we get out of this suffocating siege of pollution? Let us clearly view managing environmental pollution with a sense of urgency. The Global Times says the government should stop its previous method of covering up the problems and instead publish the facts. And the China Daily puts the blame on Beijing's skyscrapers. It says the high-rises are too densely built and block the dirty air from dispersing. Jan, it's pretty rare for state media to be joining the anger directed at the government, isn't it?
Yes, actually, I think the problems in China, I think it's everybody has the same. I think knows that growth and versus pollution. But what I wanted to emphasize is that there's some aspect normally media may not be in discovery, because we work with the Chinese government at the national level and also local level at cities. In the past 8 years, we actually see some significant changes. It's not enough in terms of the requirement for clean air and actions, but if we look at from that perspective, there's some encouragement happening, especially this year. And for example, before there's no PM 2.5 standard, which is the major indicator for health-related air pollution measurement. And however, this year, the 74 cities in China already released the PM 2.5 data, And that is also Beijing. If you look at Beijing's news report and the daily data, it's all about PM 2.5, and they're already voluntarily advanced using the new standards. And that's the first observation, and this one should be given sufficient recognition. You cannot always, assess the government performance for the same reason. And secondly, we saw a lot of progress on communication with public. So the data released and a lot of even state-controlled media also reveal lots of facts. And the government officials, especially Beijing EPB leaders, are even giving a very severe assessment on the air pollution, and also even quoted that the major problem is not actually natural condition. It is which is an air dispersion condition.
Okay.
It's actually we have too much emission. So I
Let
think
me bring
that's
Victor
the highlights.
in here, because I want to
there's
ask.
some encouragements.
I want to ask Victor whether he thinks that the people in China are becoming more critical of China's speed of development. There seems to be a backlash now against the sheer pace of change in China, with some people saying that it's affecting their quality of life, it's affecting their environment.
Well, let me make 2 points. One is a response to your previous question. The pollution problem in Beijing and in many other parts of China is such that nobody can hide that. And everyone is a victim of that. Therefore, even if you are the government official at the highest level of government, or if you are an ordinary citizen at the lowest level of grassroots level, both of you, every one of us, is a victim of such a high level of pollution. Therefore, I think it is natural that the media, the government, and the people are highly, highly critical. Pollution is becoming public enemy number one in China. Now, on your second question, I don't think the choice is between whether you have development without any regard for environmental protection, or you pay attention to environmental protection at the expense of development. I think China's new paradigm, the challenge for us is to come up with a new paradigm, that is the green development. We need to have development. We have to grow, but we need to grow in a more scientific way, in a green manner, so that we less pollute and we become less energy dependent. We increase our energy efficiency. There are many things we can learn from our neighboring countries, from the United States, from Germany, from many European countries. And I think we need to be bold and visionary in this regard, and courageous in learning from all the other nations in the world and come up with our own way of green development. Green development is a necessity for China going forward. It's no longer development for development's sake.
Marshall, I think we can agree that green development is the way forward, but is there a commitment from the Chinese government that there will be green development? Because there's a lot of people criticising the relationship between the government and the factories, etc., in China.
Sure. Well, Victor's bringing up a good point. One could perhaps hope that the current effort of bringing the conversation to an intense public debate would create a contract of sort in which the people in general agree to try to change their behavior. I mean, that's nice, I think. It would be lovely if it would happen, but humans typically don't respond that well to authoritative stance or even moral invective. Usually they respond to prices. And that's my point, is that if you raise prices enough to abate or alter behavior and consumption, make people more conservative, consume less, think more about how they consume, the growth will slow down. It won't be drastic necessarily, but it'll be a slowdown. Now the question is, if China slows down to a very comfortable pace of 3 or 4% per annum growth in real terms, that would be fine. It could probably affect a lot of energy conservation policies at pace. The problem is the population at large may not accept that.
Let's just bring in some reaction that we've had on this issue via Facebook. Casey Lingineni says, fresh air has become an expensive and an almost extinct commodity, even in the Indian cities. The air is almost toxic, and it isn't on anyone's agenda to address pollution. Halif Wardi says, what develops a nation is what pollutes the environment. Oil is the lifeline of the society, and unless we get alternative energy resources, this environmental degradation will continue. Greta de Volt-Ford argues this is the real price of materialism. And Salila Kashung says all China is doing is the traditional model of development done by every first world country. It's only because China is so big do we see pollution on a scale this large. And Marshall, I mean, it is the case, isn't it, that other cities like London and...
This is the challenge we face, is that China, if it were a small country like Thailand or Burma or even Mexico, could handle this, but it has a population that's too big, and its ambition to become a middle income now and soon a wealthy country in the next 2-3 decades means that it can only do so if not only China, but hold your breath, all of the rest of us consume a lot less fuel per capita, and that just has to change.
But countries like London and Los Angeles, I just want to make this point that countries like London, which suffered that terrible smog back in the 50s, and Los Angeles made quite big changes in a small space of time, simply by doing things like changing fuel to smokeless fuel and cutting down traffic. Beijing managed to cut its pollution back in the time of the Olympics by restricting traffic. Why doesn't it do that again?
They can't. Well, the Beijing solution is not necessarily the right one. That was just shutting things down. But you're correct. The United States cut its consumption per capita in half in less than 1 decade before. It's gone back up again. But the United States uses price signals. Now, that is probably the most effective means for anyone to cut the price. The problem is you cut down growth in the process as well. I think China can go through this process. The question is, will the new administration now in power have the courage to do things which would put it at risk? Bear in mind, the transition period is quite a tricky one in China. It takes about a year for the new government to secure its roots. And if it is too aggressive in doing something which is right for the long term, the moral choice, it may make people so unhappy that the party would be at risk. And you know the party will not let itself be at risk.
OK, last 2 quick questions. Victor, what do you think about that from Marshall? Does the new administration have the courage to make changes?
No, I think ever since it assumed the power in November, this new lineup of leaders in China has already demonstrated a lot of courage and vision and wisdom in dealing with many daunting challenges in China. And I'm personally very confident that this new leadership, especially after next March, when they will move into the government, for the coming 10 years, will have enough as what we call wisdom, courage and vision to steer China in the right direction. And I think if China keeps polluting, it's not only the Chinese people will be victims, the whole world population will be victims too. So we have an extra responsibility. We not only need to save our own environment for the Chinese people's sake, we have to be global citizens, and we have to perform our own responsibilities. Therefore, we'd better have great confidence in the new leadership in China. Let's do our job. Let's live up to the expectation.
Yan, do you agree? Do you think that there are going to be changes in China? I mean, China does have an environmental policy, doesn't it?
Actually, I do agree with Gao's point, Victor's point, but however, I think many people always referring China, always looking at the top level changes, which is true, it's quite crucial. But my experience working at the national and down to provincial and the city level, I'm already experienced changes. For example, you mentioned the international experience, how they go over the process of pollution into green development. Actually, many cities are already asking that question. How shall we plan our air quality management planning in a more scientific way?
I think Marshall wants to just have
predictable.
Marshall wants the last word to that. Quickly, Marshall, we're coming to the end of the programme.
Well, I think it can be done, but the price signals are what it requires. It requires we start raising the price of fuel and giving people a bonus if they consume less fuel. I mean, basically, the polluters have to pay, the people who consume less get the benefit. That is a clear incentive, and it will work very well in China.
OK, we've come to the end of the programme. Thank you very much indeed for all your contributions. A big thank you to my guests today from Beijing, Yang Peng, from Manila, Marshall Mays, also from Beijing, Victor Gao. Well, let's give you some feedback on our last show, France's military operation in Mali. Truman says, congratulations, France. You played very good game to create so-called terrorist groups. And Moto FTM says they pulled out of Afghanistan because there are no economic interests there. But Mali has minerals. If you have any comments about today's show, you can tweet me directly at Hackhound, or you can send an email to insidestory@aljazeera.net. But for the moment, from me, Shuli Ghosh. Bye for now.